Hi, this is the second episode of The Strength Shift, my new podcast. I am Nikki, menopausal powerlifter and one half of K&N Powerlifting, and this is The Strength Shift. We'll be covering ladies who've taken up powerlifting, strength training later in life, and how this has changed them mentally and physically, along with the added fun of peri and menopausal symptoms. Getting stronger in every way at any age. At a later date, I will also cover the andropause in men. My guests will include other women like myself, along with coaches and nutritionists who will have valuable expert advice. I am not a qualified nutritionist or coach, so all information, unless with a qualified person, will be of hindsight and from mine and my own guest experience. Today, on my second episode, I am very, very happy to have Dr. Sophie Evelyn. Tonight I have Dr. Sophie Evelyn, owner and creator of Power Breed Performance, sorry, I'm not with it tonight. Nutrition PhD, performance nutrition, strength and conditioning coach, and more importantly, my nutritionist.
More important. Hey, Pet, how are you?
How are you?
I'm good. I'll
We don't
still
get to chat very often, do we?
no. To be fair, we do through the week. We touch base through the week, but it's never like in depth. It's always like you doing okay.
It's just
You
WhatsApp.
good?
Yeah, we
Good,
never get.
yeah.
You wouldn't want to talk to me on a regular basis because we never get anything done.
Well, fucking likewise. You know that I got it anyways. But yeah, it's good. It's still
um,
I'm still not used to hearing Dr. Sophie Evelyn. Like I've any podcast that I'm invited onto, it's always Dr. Sophie Evelyn. Or any like if somebody books a hotel for us, like on behalf like on my behalf, it's always Dr. Sophie Evelyn. I'm still not used to it. It's been
well, you
it's been
are
like
more
it's
than
been over a
deserved.
year now. Mad.
Is it? Wow.
Yeah. Well, we got married a year and 2 weeks
I
ago. And
I
then I got my
know.
title. I graduated in December, but I had my title
Wow.
from last year, didn't I? So
And going on that, I've been, you've been my coach now for 3 years, just over 3 years.
3 years. I've put up with you for that long.
What a journey it's been.
A lot.
We have
How many comps
got
have
through
you
some
done?
stuff.
How many
Yeah.
comps have you done? Gotta be a few.
Uh, it's been a fair few, yeah. And
Yeah.
life stuff has got in the way
Ah,
quite a lot.
yeah. Comps aside, I think more than anything, I think we've watched each other, dare I say, grow up a little bit. You know what I mean? Like
It's
grow into multiple different phases of life.
Yeah, we've had death, marriages,
Yeah.
moving. I can't think of any. Also, illness, all sorts of things.
Mad. Absolutely
But we
mad.
got there.
3 years.
We're still going.
3 years.
I know. So, my first question for you is: what got
Mm.
you into coaching and nutrition?
Um, to be honest with you, I get this is always the first question that I'm asked, and every time I'm like, "Oh, what is it?" What got me into it? So I always was very, very interested in nutrition. A while ago, my mom was going through the loft, and she found, the I don't know the proper name for them, but there's like the cards, and it's like, what do you want to be when you're older? Where do you see yourself in such and such? And when we were in year two, so you're like 7 or 8 years old when you're in year two, I think. She'd found this like pack of stuff that were done when I was like 7 or 8 years old in primary school. And in there it was what's your dream job? And even at 7 years old, my dream job was to work in dietetics or be a physiotherapist. I don't know how I knew what that was at 7 years old, but like in our household, we just grew up on like health programs, World's Strongest Man. Like I had a genuine interest in it. My dad used to play football. He used to do a lot of like endurance cycling and stuff like that as well. So I think I was probably just exposed to it from a very, very young age, and kept a lot of people like that around us at that age. And then I started playing rugby and got very, very injured, and had quite a lot of issues sort of off the pitch. I had a massive sort of interest in, I think, just in general nutrition and stuff. This is a wild statement to make, but God, I was a big Gillian McKeith fan. Massive, massive.
No.
God, honestly. what a wild statement, but I was a big Gillian McKeith fan, man. Like, other
Mhm.
people had like boy band posters on the fucking wall. Oh, I was sat there watching You Are What You Eat. It's a ridiculous thing to say now that I think about it. But I was really interested. Like I used to it was just something that really interested us. We were also vegetarian as kids and stuff like that as well. So I think I spent a lot of time sort of researching like good quality food and stuff like that as vegetarians and got really, really big into that. Um, and then yeah, I started playing sports, always played sports from a very young age and was always very, very aware that there wasn't many females in the industry, and was always kind of pushed by my parents to kind of not allow that to continue to be the trend. So it was always kind of pushed into spaces that were maybe slightly more male dominated and just, to be honest, had this unshakable confidence as a kid, which
Mm.
I'm incredibly grateful for because I think if you consider it now, it's a lot harder to kind of develop that confidence as a female in a male dominated space in any
Mm.
industry, let alone the sports industry. Um, and yeah, it just kind of went from there. Got really, really interested in it, continued to study it through school. Um, God, I used to be subscribed to the Nutrition Optimum uh, Institute of Optimum Nutrition magazine from like a younger age and stuff like that as well. Like I've still got loads of issues in my mum and dad's house in the loft. I did my undergraduate degree in human nutrition and got a first for that, and just it just never left us. I think
Mm.
once you got into the realm of nutrition and stuff, I started, um, like I say, playing rugby. Came away from that. Started bodybuilding. Tried to sort of make it the professional ranks. Wasn't very good at it, but continued to sort of get interested, and then got interested in strength sports. Always brought up around world's strongest
Mm.
man and that kind of thing, and it just all I think all of my worlds collided. And I started to realize the more and more that I sort of went through uni that maybe the thing that I enjoyed the most was the education side around nutrition and, muscular potential and strength and stuff like that. So just dug into that a little bit further and now it's my entire career. It's
It's your
taken
whole
over.
world.
It's taken over my entire life. I think when I started my PhD, I was pretty confident my entire life was going to be academia, going to
Mm.
lecture and stuff like that. But the coaching side of things took off too aggressively, for that to kind of be ignored. So now I'm just stuck with it.
And you have a huge base as well. You are widely known.
Yeah,
And
I'm really lucky that I have such a good sort of like just group of people around us. And
they're all crazy,
again,
your lot. You know that.
oh, you don't need to tell me. Honestly, I'm well
I'm
aware.
one
I
of them,
mean,
so I know.
and exactly, yeah, I'm really, really fortunate. I have two coaches that work with the business as well. The three of us, myself, Tex and Mark, love them to bits. They do such a fantastic job. I think there's over 120 of us on the team now.
Wow.
It's just, it's just everything you could ever want. Like
Mm.
it's the stuff that people, when they come into the industry and they want to do the 10K months and there's the fitness mentors that are like, I want to do this and I want to like that's never really bothered us that much. But to say that I've got a team with other coaches that I work with and there's 120 people across multiple multiple sports for different reasons and stuff like that, from literally like 13, 14 years old right up to like
Mm.
75.
Is that your oldest,
That's
75?
yeah, I'm 75. Like you cannot really ask for any more than that. I feel like people when people look for like a target demographic to kind of have some kind of trust from people to influence them in their lives from
Mm.
that young age right up to that age is you didn't dream of that growing up. Like even when you write down what you want to be when you're older, to be somebody that could give some kind of positive influence across that range of a demographic, you kind of dream of that stuff. Do you know what I mean?
No.
Like it's you kind of shoot for the stars, even to that degree. I don't think, to be honest with you, because it doesn't seem possible.
I think also having younger people like in their teenagers, I don't know whether they're girls or boys, but you want girls or in teenage years these days to not be told you've got to be skinny, you've got to not eat,
Yeah,
you've got to do this, and to have that positive effect that it is okay to train, to strength train,
yeah,
to worry, not worry that you're going to be too muscly, because actually exactly is that is what you need and what you want. And and then not spend the rest of their lives worried that, oh, I've got to fit into this size 6 dress, or because that is just, to me, you know.
Well, that's what we've sort of been conditioned to and conditioned with, and desirability comes from how slim you are, and regardless of your ability, I think elsewhere, ultimately we're often pigeonholed into what is the best thing to do, but we're pigeonholed into an aesthetic, but we're not
Mm.
educated on like physical performance and actual capabilities, and the things that we can do. And it is talked a lot on social media, isn't it? There's the very
Mm.
sort of body positive movement, and then there's an incredibly sort of I mean, I'm not on TikTok. I don't use it or anything like that. But there was a massive surge in something called skinny talk as well, and it was
I,
lots and lots of sort of discourse around how to make sure that you are under this body weight and how to make sure that you are this size and XYZ. But there was no kind of discussion around physical capabilities and the actual sort of emotional, like,
mm.
just damage that comes with the sort of deterioration of body weight and stuff like that, and the quality of life that might be lost as
Hmm.
a result of it and stuff like that. And that has a lot of potential to influence younger generations, but nobody seems to be that bothered about like feeling good and feeling this. And look, we're all there. Like we've all been there. We've all been younger, and we want to look like this. We want to look like this. And oh my God, I look great in pictures, and I look great in this, but feel horrendous in ourselves. And
Yeah.
you see, and in males and females, I think it's important to mention males
Yeah,
go through this as
absolutely.
well. And I think the expectations of males as well was there. If you look at a footballer's physique, for example, but there's got to be the push and pull with it, because for all, like, we are encouraging individuals to not drive themselves to the realm where they're so thin it's debilitating. We've also got to make sure that we encourage individuals to maintain an actual sort of healthy lifestyle. And, I think there's the body positivity movement, which is fantastic for the emotional side of things, but educating people around actual health parameters and things that are going to sort of
Mm.
affect their quality days of life is so important. There's a full chapter that I did with my PhD thesis that was about days of quality life affected, and it looks at figures, NHS-driven figures that basically have behaviors that impact the quality days of life that you have.
Mm.
And it's absolutely crazy what can impact like one singular day of your life.
Oh, yeah.
And I think a lot of the time people are like, well, if I'm this body weight, then I won't have any of that affected. Like, I'm gonna have the most healthy and this life. Or on the other side, oh, if I don't, diet down into oblivion, I'm gonna have the most thorough and healthy life possible. When in reality, it sits somewhere in the middle of that sliding
Mm.
scale, where the things that you're able to perform, and the behavioral change that we should be striving for is for those quality days of life. And then the emotional satisfaction and the comfort that we find within being able to perform those behaviors,
Mm.
as opposed to, I'm morbidly obese, but I'm happy that I'm not skinny. I'm incredibly skinny. I'm not happy that I'm morbidly obese. Like,
Yeah.
there's that subsect in the center of where we should just be incredibly happy in our ability to perform in any regard. And I think, to be honest with you, that's kind of where the entire business came from, because I've always branded myself as a performance coach. And I think we should be trying to drive as much positive behavioral change, and actually ensuring that it's, there's a world full of drugs, isn't there? You look at the GLP-1s that are in the world at the moment,
Yeah.
and it's looking
Which
predominantly
I have a
to
real
cut
concern
down.
about some of them, to be fair.
Yeah,
But
yeah, and it's incredibly easy accessible. It appears everybody's selling them at the moment, and the golden tagline is, I'm losing so much weight, I'm doing this, and I'm doing this.
mm,
But the emphasis needs to be on what is facilitating behavioral change that is actually going to benefit these health markers. Do you know what I mean? And don't get me wrong, I do think that these GLP-1s have the place for that in context. You have some people who it has legitimately changed their life, because this body fat loss and this body weight loss has allowed somebody, it's facilitated more movement from somebody, it's developed more muscular tissue because they can withstand more training and all that kind of thing. Like, there is an argument for it there somewhere.
mm,
But to pinpoint it as something that is exclusively driving the number on the scales down is incredibly damaging to the industry, and I think incredibly damaging to individuals that most of the time, I'm going to say purchase the product and just take it of their own accord, which is
Yeah.
terrifying to me. Terrifying.
I mean, I know a couple of people that have taken GLP-1s and from the doctor, and or they've got it some private clinic, and they've lost a huge amount of weight. They've gone from a size 20 down to a size 8. Still fantastic. I personally, my opinion is it's a little bit too much, but that's my opinion. But they've got to a point where, oh, they're going to come off it, but they're only going to eat one meal a day. She said, I can have whatever I like to eat. She said, I had cheese and crackers today. And that's all she'd eaten for the whole day. How, in any way, shape, or form, is that healthy for women? Because that is just causing eating issues, isn't it?
Well, yeah, and I think if you look towards, dysfunctional relationships with food, and not even necessarily like the emotional behavior surrounding food, but just nutritional adequacy. If you look at somebody's, diet on a daily basis, if the only thing she's consuming is that one meal, the longer term deficiencies that we're going to see within cellular health and that metabolic health is going to tank so aggressively.
Yeah,
Those quality days of life that I talked about earlier on are going to be non-existent because there's
yeah, yeah.
absolutely no there. And that behavioral change, like I say, if she's lost that, significant amount of body weight, that should be now facilitating her consuming a more thorough diet, nutritional adequacy, allowing for more expenditure, allowing for more movement so that, there is the sort of nutritional requirement there to facilitate more activity and things, not, oh, well, now I'm going to eat. And this was one of my biggest gripes with whenever I get a consultation. A lot of the time consultations do come across and they are asking about the likes of semaglutide, tirzepatide, retatrutide, anything like that. The vast majority of the time, people are saying, I've got really, really, like my guts are absolutely trashed. My nails are the worst they've ever been. My hair's really thin. My hair's like falling out. Gum health was a really, really big one. My breath smells
Okay.
were yeah, been a massive surge in this. I feel like my breath smells all the time. My gum health's really, really bad. In terms of stomach acid production, these people are barely consuming any sort of like soluble fiber because they're not consuming vegetables and fruit within their diet anymore. Again, in terms of like vitamin deficiencies and stuff, in terms of folic acid consumption, of course the hair and nails are fucked. Of course their breath's going to smell. In terms of the actual sort of stomach acid production and stuff, like it is absolutely dire, and we're seeing a massive decline in oral health as a result of it and stuff
Wow.
as well. But what should accompany the use of these GLP-1s ultimately is not necessarily the inherent side effects, because I think if you were to look at a compound and the clinical trials that they go through, you have to state the side effects of a drug. But what is not being stated is the side effects of the
So,
diff
mental.
yeah, well, mental side effects, but also the pretty extreme deficiencies that we're seeing now
Mm.
from a very, very incomplete habitual diet.
Mm.
Somebody's habitual diet now is fucking cheese and crackers. There's absolutely nothing. There's no evidence anywhere to say that the rebound off the back of these GLP-1s has every single person in existence suddenly developing this incredibly healthy lifestyle and this incredibly well thought out and thorough diet, because often the education alongside their use is not present.
No.
And if it is being purchased through an online provider or through a clinic or wherever that may be, nowhere in there is it stating, please be careful of your nutritional intake, perhaps educate yourselves around this and this. Like the government guidance very much still stands. Like I could again, you could use the likes of the Eat Well guide or the Eat Well plate here, which suggests up to 7 portions of fruit and veg a day. I couldn't name many people that are legitimately consuming that amount of,
No.
again, nutritional adequacy, because their gastric emptying times are too now like now far too long, so they can't have fiber in their diet because they're too full all of the time and they've got no appetite and stuff. Like you've got to look at the full picture, man. And I think
Mm.
coming back to sort of young males and females, if that is the sort of development of behaviors from teenage years, and you've got people who are using retatrutide and Ozempic and Monjaro and all that kind of stuff, what's going to happen? down the line, if they've had years and years of like minimal fruit and veg consumption, like
Mhm.
metabolic health is going to be the worst it's ever been. And honestly, I'm
Mm.
telling you, 15, 20 years, we're going to be in a serious crisis just because of just dysfunctional metabolic health.
It comes back to a comment I made on my previous podcast. It's like, do you want to be the oldest one in the gym or the youngest one in a home? And that
Yeah.
is also covers that too, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know,
And these
it's
are
not just
research.
about training, it's about how you look after yourself as an entirety.
Yeah. It's shortcuts and research compounds, and we have to use clinical data alongside everything, and not even necessarily clinical data, but just a degree of common sense, because something sounds like a shortcut. There's going to be things that are going to crop up that we're going to regret pretty heavily in 15 to 20 years time, maybe less than that. And mean mortality rates it's already scary. There was a figure published quite recently on this was a very, very extreme example, but this is professional bodybuilders and competitive bodybuilders. The mean age of a bodybuilder who has died, be it via cardiac episodes or anything like that, is 45.
Wow.
45 years
That's
old. And
just like, there's
this is,
nothing.
yeah, it's really, really scary. And I think for all we've had years and years of maybe substance abuse via the likes of alcohol and recreational drugs and things like that as well. I would say we're certainly in a realm now where the substance abuse is perhaps exogenous hormones and exogenous compounds and stuff like that. And I think it's very, very important to have just an investigative approach of these things, because if there are individuals who are going to go ahead and use them, then I think it's our best place to maybe not offer up judgment, but offer up support in harm reduction and support in, again, education surrounding the behaviors that maybe fall off when these
Mm.
compounds use and things like that. So, everybody wants the quick fix. Nobody really appears to be that well equipped for the aftermath. And, are we talking about a 6 weeks of fat loss, or are we talking about 60 years of
Yeah.
unhappiness and cellular dysfunction,
Absolutely. And that sort of leads me on to that. Like, would you say then training older women over younger women is harder or not?
Do you know what? I wouldn't. I, from my experience, and I've coached quite a lot of women who are slightly older, I'm of the opinion that women who I've trained at an older age have a very, very clear view on what it is they want. They've got an amazing sense of clarity around what it is they've done in their life, the things that they maybe haven't done in their life up until this point, and what they would like to get out of the time that they've spent not doing the things that they want. So I would say it's not necessarily more difficult in a sense. I think that the individuals that come to me that are, I'm going to say maybe, like, dare I say, over 40. So not
Mm.
even like of that old an age. I would say over 40 have maybe gotten to a point in their lives where there's something in there that they're maybe curious about, or they feel isn't fulfilled yet, or they want to investigate, and they maybe have the income to do so, or they're now at a point where they've tried XYZ, and they've given it enough time to be certain that somebody else could do a better job of it.
Mm.
And I think particularly if we look at 50 plus, 60 plus, these are individuals who have spent a good portion of their life doing what they thought they wanted. And it might have been exactly what they wanted, or they've gotten to an age where they've gone, there's something more, and now if I don't do it
Mm.
now, I'm never going to do it. So
Mm.
I've always really, really enjoyed coaching older men and women, because I think that their appreciation for how fickle interests can be has waned. I
Yeah.
think they understand the importance of having things in their life that are going to facilitate the better quality days of life and facilitate the better headspace and all these kind of things, where younger people, I tend to find it is a lot more fickle. And I spend a lot of my time when I'm coaching younger people to be like, look, it's really important that you don't make this your entire identity. It's really important that you don't place your entire self-worth on this and you do this. Whereas I find that women and men who are older have kind of already got that figured out. They understand that this is a portion of their life that is going to facilitate better days, but it is not their entire life, and that they've got this, and this, and this is to facilitate better output across different areas. Whereas people who are kind of, dare I say, even, I probably get kickback for this, even sub 30, I think.
Yeah.
People who are sub 30 can very much still not have all of that figured out and still do tie their self-worth to something that should realistically facilitate better days. So
Yeah.
I genuinely think that the older demographics have, for lack of a better phrase, they've seen a lot of shit. They've seen a lot of shit that they really, really didn't fucking like. They've seen a lot of shit that they really do like. And they know that if they take this up, the reason that they're taking it up is to basically make sure that they have more shit that they like
Mm.
and not to waste their time on something. So I'm equally grateful for the opportunity to coach a whole host of demographics.
Yeah.
But the kind of uptake of it is so different and the approach is so different. And I find that an older individual values the time so much more like wholly. And I think they just have so much more awareness of their time and awareness of things that affect them. So in some regards, they can be, so set on, no, I value my time so aggressively. This is my time. But they've got so much more awareness that life is just not linear. And I think
Mm.
that a lot of people who are maybe in those younger demographics are yet to get there yet. Maybe this is an
Mm.
opportunity for them to see that. So you either have people who come to you who this is usually what happens if you get a junior or you get a teen lifter who maybe is taking it up through uni or through late sixth form or something like that, and you coach them through 19 years old right up to or 18 years old up to like 22, and it's their entire life. They love it. They commit to training. They're so committed. They bed in some really, really great habits. They get used to checking in every week. They train 4 times a week and it becomes part of their routine. And then they get their first full-time job that starts to formulate their career. And they start to realize that the world doesn't necessarily revolve around these specific subsets of time that they've got
Mm.
within their week. So then they have to be a little bit more flexible around the time that they have. And that starts to pose issues because they're so used to having 2 hours at this time, 2 hours at this time, and that's where that's going to happen, and that's where that's going to happen. But that needs to be more malleable now because the demands of their job and their career are so much greater than that they've ever had. So
Mm.
then they feel like they've failed themselves because their priorities have shifted slightly and they aren't giving as much as they used to towards their sport. So they feel like they've failed the sport, and that's where they feel like they're being fickle. Whereas
Mm.
the narrative needs to be this can still very much facilitate a very, very good quality of life for you. You just need to come to realize that life is never linear, and this is something that facilitates better days, not something that should formulate the narrative that you failed because you couldn't give the time that you previously gave to
Yeah.
it. So that's usually the younger demographic, whereas the older one is usually, fuck, I'm just having the best time. I
Yeah.
want to give my all to this. I want to make sure that I really, really take this seriously because this is for me. This is something that I've wanted for such a long time. But equally, I'm not going to beat myself up if I can't do it on this day, if I can't do it on this day, but I will damn make sure that it
Mm.
happens at a time that is most convenient for me. They're
Yeah.
just two completely different narratives
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
equally are
Absolutely.
fascinating, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I never in a million years imagined I would be where I am now. I feel the best I have. I'm 51. I feel the best I've ever felt in my life.
Yeah, yeah,
I still have days where I go, oh, I don't like the look of me in the mirror. But I think that's something that all women and men have. You get that look sometimes. You go, oh, I look bloated. I look fat today. I can't
yeah,
cope. But I am so much more aware now that I have got to that stage where I go, okay, my weight where it is makes me the strongest I've ever been.
yeah,
Therefore,
yeah,
let's build to that. And, even though sometimes I look at the scales and go, oh, I don't like this. And then I go, no, I wouldn't be lifting what I'm lifting and doing what I do now if I
yeah,
wasn't where I am. So pack it in. And I have to have a
yeah.
little
And
talk
it's
with
such a
myself.
complex measure as well. You have a lot of people, like I say, place a lot of self-worth on it, but God, if you were to sort of outline the metabolic cascades that were to occur to determine body weight, people would be like, do you know what? The matter that I'm 100 grams up today, this doesn't matter. And I think the longer that you expose yourself to a realm where strength and body weight and stuff kind of go hand in hand, or you're around people who maybe have varying levels of ability, at a different body weight, that like buffer between seeing the number and being like disappointed, it gets shorter and shorter because you start to rationalize it and you go through the shift of I wish that it was less. Actually, nah, I'm fine. Like I don't wish that it was less because I don't wish for my performance to be less. And equally,
Mm.
you have the same conversation with yourself where you go, the justification for that number being up there. So that little like refractory period of the number versus the realization and the justification of it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. I think the more that you
Mm.
expose yourself to it. And I think it is just something that comes with time. Like I think that it's something that you don't, it's not like an innate process. I think you just develop the sort of toolkit to understand why it's happening significantly better the more that you expose
Mm.
yourself to it and the more that you work through it kind of thing. So it's a skill that you develop in my opinion, a little bit later in life, or
Mm.
perhaps a little bit earlier when you surround yourself with people who are very, very good at it.
I mean, last year, as we well know, I had a fantastic, supposedly prep for the British. We thought everything was doing really well. I had bloods done in about the May. Everything looked fine. We got to comp day and I had nothing. There was nothing there. And we were like, what the hell? Have a blood test and find out that all of my hormones had absolutely tanked and there was
Yeah.
nothing. We were like, okay.
It was
I've been
one of
very
those
lucky that we've
things.
managed to sort that out in such
Yeah.
an amount of time that most people wouldn't do that. But luckily, we've been quite on it, and
Yeah.
it's
I
been,
mean,
yeah.
when your bloods came through following that meet and everything was pretty much as close to zero as you could ever imagine, it was like at least there's a reason
Yeah.
for it. And I think a lot of the time the narrative around, like, let's just say hormone panels, and this is perhaps slightly more male dominated view. I think a lot of people come into it and they see their estradiol and they see their estrogen sort of values and they want them as low as physically possible. And a lot of people are like, I don't want that. I want the test to be nice and high. I want my estradiol to come in nice and low. And I just think that narrative needs to diminish as much as possible because people forget how neuroprotective estrogen can be and
Mm.
how useful it can be in conjunction with testosterone for strength expression. And ultimately, testosterone aromatizes to that marker. So, if we haven't got any tests, it's not going to aromatize to any estradiol. If we've got no estradiol, fuck me, you're not getting out of
You're
bed, are you?
buggered.
Like, your values with fucking zero. Like,
But am I not right in
so.
saying that low estrogen in older women, people don't realise can actually have such a massive effect on your cognitive?
Absolutely.
And again, people don't think, I think, oh, we're going into menopause. Some people don't suffer, and other
Yeah.
people do. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, mine was the brain fog, the loss of strength over that time, etc. But some
Yeah.
people don't have that. But to have
Well,
the
I
brain
think
fog where you
particularly in,
go, where the fuck have I put that?
yeah, when you have that period of like, oh, I'm a trained individual, like maybe I'm just getting older, maybe that muscle tissue is going to dissipate a little bit. You tend to see the sarcopenia, it kicks up a little bit more than it should. You might, and I think a lot of people see maybe the strength like just coasts along a little bit. And I think when you've been an individual that, you do all the right things and the tissue has been very, very consistent, the strength expression has been consistent, and yours tanked so aggressively, and it really wasn't a one-off as well. Like it just started, it was like taking a power cable out the wall. It literally just went.
Yeah.
So when we started to see that it was at least the endocrinology lined up with it, it was almost a bit like a bit of a relief because then at least it made sense because you were kind of doing things, and then you're quite intuitive in a regard because I think in terms of cognition, you're very, very high functioning. You're not somebody who consistently reports like, oh, I'm such a scatterbrain, I'm such this and this. That you've kind of never been in that realm. So when
No.
that started to crop up, it was like, just get your bloods done because that's not
Right.
you.
Yeah.
Like it
Yeah.
was quite quick. It was like that's quite uncommon for you. And because we'd reported that, and because we tracked that data, I mean, like you say, we're 3 years deep now, because we'd at least had that really, really thorough data set. When something flagged up that it was going wrong, we were like, "Oh,
Mm.
like obviously you don't want to try and sort of diagnose somebody, and you don't want to try and formulate this random approach, but yours was kind of too obvious. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like it was a lot of it. I mean, you as well were like, there's something not right here. This is not
Yeah,
it.
because
Like I
Kev,
cannot be I cannot be this cognitively impaired and work. Like this has never happened before.
yeah,
This is now something different. And I genuinely think that there's a lot of females that will go through the menopause and perhaps not realize, or maybe not sort of have the association that that cognitive decline could be one of those things. We just happen to catch it very, very early because we have all of that data and we have all that information around how you would typically perform. So for you, it was such a drastic and
mm.
steep decline. We had it straight away. Do you know what I mean? We were very, very fortunate in that we clocked it immediately.
But I think also being very lucky with Kev being so very
Yeah,
aware of me, he was sitting there going, "There's something wrong. You are not." And I could genuinely say I did not know who I was. I just went through these
yeah,
few months ago in I just and Dell would see me in the gym and go, "You're not right," because
yeah.
I will always walk around with a smile on my face. I will always be happy and chirpy. And that I wasn't, I was sort of bit nothing really. It
Yeah.
was sort of like, ugh.
It's quite scary, I think, and it's a word that's sort of bounced around quite often. But the menop it's not necessarily like dysfunctional or anything like the menopause, but it's a full, biological transition into a different state. Like, and it is you've shifted into, you know, post-menopause, or it's very, very important that we recognize that this is biologically a very, very different state. I mean, I think the average age for a female in the UK, it's about 50.
Mhm.
I'll need to double check that figure, but I'm pretty sure it's 50 to 51 is the average age. And I think even knowing that, I think it still catches people off guard, and it
Mm.
still comes as a surprise because, I think a lot of the time there seems to be this narrative that, oh, yeah, well, when you get older, you just will be tired. You just will do this. You just will do that. And it's like, yeah, but what if it's not that bad? Like, what if it's not been that bad? Like, and yours was, this is a particularly bad instance. Something is going on here. Oh, great. We've bottomed out every single hormone there is, you
Therefore,
know?
I can't squat or hit depth on a number that would have been piss easy for me in the gym.
Yeah,
It was like, what is going on?
exactly.
But
It's
yeah.
too many things there that aren't, coincidental. And I mean, you could even go down the route of, like, if you were to look at somebody like yourself, static powerlifter, in terms of like objective evidence, if you to look at the endocrinology, you could argue that like lesser degree of anabolic signaling was the reason that you didn't have that static performance.
Mm.
But for general populations and demographics that don't have that objective measure, what is their measure for I'm going
Mm.
through menopause and this is not? Do they just feel a bit worse than usual? Whereas we had everything in the run up to that. We
Yeah.
had, people say they're going through hot flushes and they're going through
Yep.
night sweats and stuff like that. Like, because it's reported in other demographics, I think there's less of a case of people sort of necessarily making that direct association. So you were in a very, very sort of, I wouldn't say beneficial position, but we were in a position where we could be like, nah, there's a few things at play here that would suggest this, this, and this. So, at the very least, we had some quite objective measures to look at and say, like, oh,
Mm.
this is the reason for it.
I mean, it wasn't like we had anything else going on. Kev's mum was in a home. We'd been looking after her.
Nah,
She died. Um, you know,
just
normal
that.
life for us.
Yeah, just that. But the fact that you were so, cognitively available through all of that and objective through all of that, when this did happen, we were like, oh, hang on a second. Wait,
Yeah,
so something else is going on
he's wrong.
here. Like,
Yeah.
I managed to get through all of those little bits and pieces, and it was something after that when there was enough for us to say, you are just barely keeping your head above water here. You
Mm.
are usually well above this sort of level of capacity.
And I
And I
think
think it's sad that
because
there's lots of women that don't get to that point as well, you know?
mm, I'd been on estrogel for a few years before last year, but only on a very low dose. So again, I knew I was perimenopausal, but nothing was really that thing until that. So, went to the doctors, upped my estrogen, thinking that would help. And actually, at that point, even on, I think when we did the bloods in August last year, I was on 2 or 3 pumps of estrogen a day,
Yeah,
and my estrogen was still some ridiculous number.
it was
That,
completely full.
yeah, it was just crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to doing my bloods after comp to see
Yeah, I'm
where
really
everything
interested
is.
to see. I think in terms of the again, like I say, the objective measures and stuff like that, like just down to like connective tissue health and soft tissue in the way that you're moving and stuff like that as well. Like I would be very, very surprised if things weren't in a better place because
Hmm.
there's been minimal tendon sort of issues, discomfort, like your work capacity's been very high. Again, you've had weeks where you've done more than ever. Like I don't think we've seen crazy degrees of fatigue and stuff like that. And all of these things that we tend to see with that estradiol reduction and well, suppression more than anything, you haven't had that. You know what
No.
I mean? So there's an argument for collagen turnover with estrogen placement and stuff like that as well. And I mean, obviously we can't necessarily track collagen turnover, but in general, the health that sort of exudes from you now compared to what it was,
Mm,
that's as objective as you're going to get, you know, without seeing
yeah.
the blood work.
Yeah, we've been very lucky, I think, and I'm not just lucky, but obviously you've helped me put a lot of measures in place to help all of
Yeah,
that. Dale's made sure that training has worked around that while we rebuilt and got my confidence back as well, really, because my
yeah,
confidence just disappeared as well.
yeah,
But yeah, and I think it was after that point where I'd also tried to drop to the lower weight category and it just hadn't agreed with me. And I think after doing that again, I've now come to that conclusion that sitting where I am, whether I like that number on the scale, is suits me, and I have to learn to know that that is okay to be there. And
yeah. And that's
it's
again, like you say before, it's that quality of life. It's being able to complete the behaviors that are going to facilitate the good days and stuff like that. And you know, if you are forever trying to reduce your body weight by 10% again and again and again, you go through that endocrinology and it tanks it again. Like you've got to consider whether it's worth it or not. And for you, it just wasn't.
no, no, definitely. I don't think as much as I'd like, sometimes I see someone who's got this lovely flat stomach and I go, oh, yeah, but I've had children. I'm older. I'm never going to look like that other person because I'm me and this is the body shape I have. And this is the one that I need to recomp and the one that I need to stay with. I just have to learn to suck it up, as I say.
Well, yeah, but it's also the one that allows you to do all the things that you do. You
Mm?
know what I mean? We only see a snapshot of somebody's aesthetic, but we don't know what their cognition state is like. We don't know how they feel around it and stuff like that. So it's so important to be like, yeah, but I'm actually really happy. I'm super strong. I'm super cognitively available. Like I'm in such a good place. So I could look like that, but I can't say that I would be as happy as I am
Mm.
for all of the other reasons.
So hormones then do really have an impact on fat loss phases.
Yeah, yeah.
Where I'm a bit of a fan of people say, oh, it is just a calorie deficit and you will lose weight. But I do think there is always slightly more because it depends on what you're trying to achieve as well. So it's not as easy as just saying, right, you cut your calories and that's it, you're going to lose weight and you're going to have the shape or the body you want. It isn't actually as easy as that, especially as you get older as well.
Yeah, and I think it's quite a damaging narrative often when it's, oh, you just need to eat less, move more. Like I don't think there's necessarily the um like discourse around that. Yeah, we're not defining the laws of physics here. Do you know what I mean? However, the ability for somebody to recomp and fat, body fat reduction, it goes through a number of phases, liberation, oxidation. It can be quite a complex process that requires some very, very specific metabolic incidences. So if we don't have the ability to have those things in place, the likelihood of liberating that body fat and oxidizing it begins to reduce down. So there's a lot of things like mitochondrial health, cellular turnover. I won't go into too much detail, but the liberation of adipocytes. There's so many different things that are at play. And if we were just to reduce it down to like exclusively net energy balance, I think that you will almost certainly see good success with targeting net energy balance. You will see great success with an adherable system that allows somebody to maintain the net energy balance and again facilitates the behaviors that they need to recomp in the most effective manner. Be that when you're in a better state mentally and you're in a better state physically and you haven't tanked hormone production, you haven't done XYZ, it makes a lot more sense, in my opinion, to be able to produce and facilitate as much ATP production as possible, to be able to liberate that body fat and actually oxidize it, and maintain a really, really good degree of nutrient partitioning and facilitate as much muscular development as physically possible, and drive that muscular network and the sort of resting metabolic rate and all of these things that I think the calories in, calories out argument completely disregards. Like, it is absolutely wonderful to suggest that somebody could just continue to lose body fat and continue to lose body weight, eating 800 calories a day. I don't think anybody's denying that. But is it the most effective way to do so? And is that a slightly more, the optimal crowd might have a go at me here, but is that the most optimal strategy to get from point A to point B? Not a chance.
No.
Again, if we're going to continue to see dispaired gut, dysfunction of the gut, oral health, cognitive health, cellular health, can you legitimately say that massively deficient diet is going to facilitate the most fat loss as physically possible? Of course it's not, because you're not seeing thriving cellular health. A thriving cellular system is going to be significantly more efficient at oxidizing fat and liberating adipocytes than a really, really impaired one. So it's a very reductionist argument, isn't it? The eat less, move more. It's not that it doesn't work, it's just very, very reductionist. And I think there's so much more to understand around metabolic dysfunction and stuff like that. And again, in my thesis, we talk about how obesity is a multifaceted metabolic dysfunction. If everybody in the world that was obese was just moving more and eating less, they'd lose body fat, but there's a reason that these people rebound and don't live their lives as healthy body weight individuals. Do you know what I mean? It's so much more complex than that. And I think it's so easy to disregard that sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. I'm also a huge non-fan of the whole BMI. I think in my
Yeah,
opinion, that needs to be thrown away, out of the window. It
yeah,
puts people in. I mean, if you look at my BMI and I put all the figures in, apparently I'm morbidly obese. Now,
yeah,
I know I'm not morbidly obese. I carry quite a bit of muscle. I might not have all of my little squidgy bits are exactly where I want them, but that's part and parcel of being older, etc. That doesn't mean to say you're morbidly obese, and I think that puts a massive pressure on women and men when they look at this number and go, oh, and the doctor goes, oh, actually, you need to lose weight, which comes back to looking after yourself. If you are
yeah,
a little bit
absolutely.
heavier, but you have good cellular health and you have good everything else, there's that balance, isn't there?
There is, and I hope to one day move to a place where it's common practice for consultants and practitioners to not just utilize BMI, but if you're going to use that figure, it needs to potentially be in conjunction with other things. So it was one of the first things that I learned in uni, and one of the first papers that I wrote was on disregarding an isolated figure of BMI and having that as a determinant factor on somebody's health. And because obviously there is literature that suggests that, for surgical purposes, for example, somebody of this BMI is more at risk than this person, that's not incorrect. But using that as an isolated value to determine somebody's health is again, it's very, very reductionist, like the calories in, calories out argument. We have other tools that we can use to formulate whether somebody is actually of a healthy body weight, stature, whatever that may be. Like honestly, something as simple as hip to waist ratio, another really, really good one that isn't used as often as I think it should be, in my opinion. But the localized displacement of fat around the abdomen is a very, very useful figure for predictions, and it's a very, very good predictor of cardiovascular health.
Mm.
Why aren't we using figures like that in conjunction with the likes of BMI, for example? Because if you had somebody who, does have a lot of muscular tissue, and let's say the body weight comes in at the morbidly obese, and then you do the hip to weight ratio, and that would suggest that they're not anywhere near a realm of being at risk. Why does one get the full rank over the other?
Mm.
Why are we using them in conjunction with each other? We have other tools like, I mean, this is a less great tool to be used, but bioelectrical impedance to help determine fat-free mass, body fat, and things like that. Again, if you've got somebody that's coming in who's 100 kilo and is 5'8", but they've got significantly more lean tissue and less body fat than somebody who's 100 kilo and again morbidly obese, you're going to get two different values with regards to their fat-free mass and their body fat. But in
Mm.
terms of BMI, it's identical.
Mm.
So why aren't we using these figures in conjunction with one another? And there's a lot of literature now. You do get some people who do move away from that. And I think the younger generation are slightly more willing to use like a conjunction of measures now, which is great. And you see loads of people now are getting like DEXA scans, and they've got the body fat and body biological impedance scales, tinnitus scale. Lots of people have got access to those now. So we are wising up to how reductionist BMI can be,
Yeah.
thankfully.
Yeah, definitely. It is much better from that point of view. But yeah, I think it's just such a journey for anybody when, as you get older, to take all of these things into context, isn't it? And
Yeah,
sort of try and
it is. And
decide.
it's a lot about.
Sorry.
It's a lot to think about, and it's also like it's a lot to try and get right as well. I think you can read a paper or an argument for absolutely anything online. So with that in mind, how do you get it right?
Mm.
Like how on
Um,
earth do you put yourself in a position where what you are reading you can guarantee is correct in that regard? Like I said this a couple of weeks ago, like our best tool in life is to remain investigative in everything that we do. We hypothesize, we investigate, and we keep doing that, and we keep doing that, and we remain incredibly curious to contextualize things and find practical application. And that never ends. It will
no.
never, ever end. We can't have a definitive answer on something because we will continuously find new data to support something else. One person could find out that this is black, and the other person could find out that this is white. That is science, and that is life. It's forever evolving. So how do
And
you
that
how do you know that what you've read is right? It's crazy.
and that also is, why every single person's journey is completely different. What I
Yeah,
am doing to another lady same age as me who is powerlifting would be a completely different journey as to what they take, how they manage their food, etc. Because everybody is different. It's
yeah,
and someone's, if that other lady's cellular health is better than mine, then they're going to have a better job at doing other stuff first before I do. It's
yeah.
just
You've got to regard somebody as a biological system. And, if we look at the DNA that makes us up and all the actions, biological systems, you're not going to get two identical biological systems. So therefore the inputs can't be the same. It
no.
like it can't be. It's physically impossible.
Yeah, you're a massive fan of gut health, aren't you? So,
Absolutely.
and what do you call it? I can't remember now. Um, gut, making sure you've been to the loo.
Motility, gut motility, gastric emptying times and gut
I never,
motility.
that's it, that's the one. Gastric emptying times. You're always going on about gastric emptying times. Not my
I
favourite subject at all.
You don't need. It's a massively important one. And again, I think it's people until you start sort of investigating it and stuff. I think particularly within strength sports and things, it's something that maybe isn't ever considered because it doesn't need to be. And Tex wrote a really, really good article on bracing within strength sports and bracing within heavy lifts and all that sort of stuff. And we relayed it back to the blood that sits around the midsection and the gastric emptying times that were appropriate. And there's a lot of times where people have been like, "Oh, I'm so bloated, I couldn't even do my belt up. Like I couldn't do anything. There's too much." That's the importance of a gastric emptying time. Like some people might need to have that slowed down. Some people might need a slightly quicker one. There's so many instances where that time almost needs to be slightly more tailored to the individual. And again, that can dictate appetite and that can dictate gut motility and stuff. There's a lot of things that, again, you could delve into it for hours, honestly.
I do think there's a massive difference between men and women there where that's concerned. I know so many women that I've spoken to over the years, specifically women who have said they don't go for 3 or 4 days at a time. And that at one point before I met you was the case for me.
Yeah,
It's not my favourite subject. I get very embarrassed about it. I shouldn't at my age, but I do. But it is important because
yeah,
it's part and parcel of everything. It means you're
yeah.
eating correctly, you're getting your right minerals, etc., that your vitamins that you need. Um, but the amount of women that are not regular, and yet men seem to have this time clock set in their bodies. I don't get it.
Women are less willing to talk about it as well, I think.
Yeah,
It's just my,
definitely.
but I think less so when they come to me. I think once it's sort of not necessarily normalized, but once it's like investigated a little bit further, it's like actually this could be so much better than it is at the moment. And that's all we're trying to do is just trying to keep, improving all of these little bits and pieces. And if it can be improved, it should be. And that's where it should start.
Yeah, that's great. And I would say that brings us to the end of my second episode of The Strength Shift with Sophie. Thank you very much. I've had a whale of a time talking to you.
Good. Sorry, I've kept you out of the sun for a full hour and a half.
Oh, we've got no sun here. It's
Have
just
you not?
cloudy and very muggy. It's horrible.
Oh, it's really sunny here.